Well, I really want to thank everyone for coming. This is the inaugural town hall for the Black Executive and Student Training Program, also known as B.E.S.T, the B.E.S.T program. The B.E.S.T program is a collaboration of like-minded people who have collaborated in the past to work in the trenches to ensure that our next generation of graduates of HBCUs are given personal hands-on support, a listening ear, and mentorship to ensure that they are ready to navigate the road to professional careers, not only to navigate the road there, but to be successful in their careers. So I am very, very excited to welcome everyone this evening. So thank you. We hope that you will be engaged in the work to support the next generation. And we're going to talk about what's changed from the people who have a history of supporting the next generation. As you know, we have an exciting group of panelists this evening. We had anticipated having a specific moderator, and unfortunately, he was not able to join us due to some last minute work obligations, but he has committed to not only joining us in the future, but he wants to tell you about his plans.
Good evening, everyone. Laz Alonso here. Hope you're all well. It was my intent to be with you to launch and celebrate the Black Executive and Student Training Program, which is designed to equip our future leaders at this nation's historically Black colleges and universities with what they need in order to navigate their way through campus life and ultimately once they graduate. Now, I was looking forward to leading a great discussion with my colleagues and on tonight's panel about the state of the HBCU and coming up with solutions on how to challenge what's been the status quo for far too long. Unfortunately, I gotta work. I'm filming the third season of The Boys and I got called onto set a day early, so I'm not able to be there in person, which is why I'm sending this video to let you guys know that as an HBCU graduate from Howard University, HU, I support the B.E.S.T program and their mission to ensure success for the next generation. As tonight's program moves along, I encourage you all to think of ways that you can support the program as well as give back to our HBCUs. It could be through financial support, finding out how you can speed time with a student, or if you're on campus as a faculty or a student, how to expand your network and build solid connections with volunteers, which could eventually help someone's future. That's the best way to ensure we're all doing our part. Thankfully, you're in good hands. Tonight, I'm gonna have to pass the moderator baton to one of the faces of B.E.S.T, the director of programs, Will Dawson, and I promise you, I'm already in talks. I'll see you soon for the next one. Stay safe, have an amazing and productive evening, and I am so sorry that I can't be there to enjoy this, but I will view the conversation that was had and see how I can also participate and utilize my network so that we can continue to build together, because we are a village and we are a community. And the only way that we will continue to grow is if we do so collectively. Thank you so much. God bless and have a great night. And I'll see you soon. Peace.
And to talk through our discussion of where do we go from here, I'd like to introduce you to the B.E.S.T program manager, Will Dawson.
Good evening, everyone. Great to see some familiar faces in the crowd tonight. This is a start of something new. This is our baby, and myself and Tracy will be the faces of the B.E.S.T program. And of course, hopefully, for those familiar with us from the Urban League for all those years, we saw the need to continue, and Carolyn brought it to us. And as our board member, as our potential board member, she said we need to do this. So she made sure that we were on board and we are ready to go. Tonight, the B.E.S.T town hall will be, as hopefully you've gotten your emails, the state of the HBCU, why we must challenge our future. Now, before we get started, let's just Laz couldn't be here, but he did leave a great message, and he is going to be here. So I know I don't look like him, but it's okay. It's fine. I think I'll do okay. But we do look forward to having him in the future. Anyone who has a question for any of our panelists, please leave that question in the chat area. And when we have the Q&A near the end of the program, we will get to those questions and ask the panelist of choice, or if it's for the whole panel, then you can do that as well. I will ask that everyone, and I see you've done that already, please keep your mics on mute. If you're not speaking, that's just for background noise and to make sure that we're okay and we can hear clearly. What I would like to do is introduce all of our panelists one at a time. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce them and give them a little prompt so that when they're telling us about themselves, they can also talk about things that they have been doing for HBCUs in the past, present, and hopefully in the future. So as we do that, I'm going to ask the panelists to just be prepared to just give a little bit. And I'm going to ask you hopefully to just talk about the history that you've had and the significant engagement in the work of HBCUs over the years, and most importantly, hands-on support of students. So please share what you believe to be your most impactful aspect of the support you've given through the years, and that will serve as a part of your opening remarks. So first up, our panelists, our esteemed panelists, and I've saw different interviews with you, sir, and I wanted to let you know that I am a fan, and I thank you for being here. Dr. Labrent Chrite. He is the current president of Bentley University, but very, very recently, he was the president of the great Bethune-Cookman University. And so, Dr. Chrite, welcome to our B.E.S.T launch event. And again, please let everybody know a little bit about yourself and also about what we talked about before, the most impactful aspect of the support you've given through the years.
Well, first of all, Will, thank you so much, and congratulations on the start of what I have no doubt will be an incredibly vital and important initiative in support of the extraordinary students who attend our nation's HBCUs. And Carolyn, it is, of course, good to see you. It has been a long time, and we go back quite a ways, so it's good to be connected. I'm really just delighted to be here and to share what little insight I might have. So again, my name is Brent Chrite, and I have had the pleasure of really committing my life to the space that is most important to me. I've been uniquely fortunate, I think, to operate at this intersection of human capital development, of poverty alleviation, of economic development, and my leadership roles as deans of business schools and presidents of universities has really affirmed that, and for that I am particularly grateful. To Will's points about the particular impact on HBCU students and what that's meant, and how we've contributed or supported HBCUs, in addition to writing lots of checks for our two kids who attended both Morehouse and for a while Xavier. I had, as Will said, the enormous pleasure of leading at an incredibly tumultuous time in its recent history, Bethune-Cookman University. We were at the Daniels College of Business at the University of Denver, which is, for all practical purposes, an institution on the other end of the spectrum, economically, culturally, socially. And as you know, because you all know and love HBCUs, Bethune-Cookman University was in a difficult place with probation, with the hemorrhaging of resources, with reputational capital challenges, exodus of students, and just the institution's success. Let me rephrase that. The institution's survivability was not only inevitable, but many people thought that it was going to be impossible to get it over the hurdle of sex. And so we decided to come here to work with the cabinet, to work with the board, and hopefully make a difference. And in these last couple of years, we were able to stabilize the finances, balance the budget, got through COVID, got it off probation, brought in record amounts of money, and so just an enormous blessing. And let me say that the kids that we impacted, the kids that we had the chance to engage at Bethune-Cookman University, like students across the country, are extraordinarily capable. And what is so important about the B.E.S.T program and about folks like you is that you recognize that the function of HBCUs at their core is to bridge that gap between ability and potential and access and opportunity. And that's what drove us to join BCU and to do that work. And that's what HBCUs do across the country. They are, of course, having a moment right now. There's a bit of a renaissance, thank God. At the most fundamental business model level, institutions are recalibrating sort of how they function, and that's particularly critical. And in that sense, I think that they will remain the force for this country and a wonderful avenue of opportunity for those who choose. This was the pleasure and honor of my professional life, and now we're looking forward to the next chapter. But and I look forward to talking a little bit more about BCU and HBCUs in general a little later on. And again, thank you for this opportunity to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. You talked about the critical work we do, and Mr. Brooks, if you would just give me a second, I would like to talk about how critical it is for us to have partners that believe in what we do and believe in what we hope to do. And since we are brand new, it's good to see familiar face in here who believed in our mission from the start and is our sponsor for tonight's event. So I see Dr. Robinson in the building. So I would like to give her the floor to introduce herself, and welcome to B.E.S.T.
Thank you. Long time no see. Thank you for having me this evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to see the relaunch. Some of my old friends here, George, Sonia. Good to see everybody looking well and healthy. So I am the head of corporate responsibility for Diageo North America. For those of you who don't know who Diageo is, we are the largest spirits and beer manufacturer of reserve brands like Johnny Walker, Don Julio, Tanqueray, Ciroc, Kettle One, Crown Royal, Captain Morgan, Casamigos, De Leon, Ciroc, etc. So all the good stuff that I hope all of us partake on responsibly. In my work, we do a lot in our community, specifically the Black community, and most recently the Black HBCU community, with our $10 million donation to 25 HBCUs and what I call my 25 Project Consortium. And we are very dedicated to this work. It is a global commitment that we've made in the revitalization and the recovery in underrepresented communities around COVID recovery, as well as with our bars and restaurants. So we have a number of funds that we have also started across the country for bar and restaurant recovery with business recovery grants in New York and Chicago, and hopefully soon to be Seattle for the Asian community as well. And our HBCU commitment will go deep. It's about a deep impact partnership with these HBCUs, and it's about the career readiness, making sure. I loved what Dr. Chrite said about potential to ability, and it's about really arming them with that career readiness, which is why I love the concept of B.E.S.T, and the former program BEEP, because it really is about us showing up to them so that they can see that what that reality looks like, and giving them what that real those real nuggets and how to play that corporate game and what that is. And it is a game and it is a skill that you have to have coming in, and you have to have a plan. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is creating innovation hubs, and hopefully creating some access that all HBCUs will have access to around assessment tools and career assessment tools to help those career offices really upweight their skills as well. So our partnership with these 25 schools is around enhancing the lowering the debt, the student loan debt with our endowment funds that we've created, our professorships. So also supporting faculty. We announced our 2 professorships in STEM with Grambling University yesterday. And then this assessment tool that we are partnering with a company that's been around 150 years. So I hope that the HBCU presidents will understand that we've done our due diligence in ensuring that this is a good tool and will be a tool that the students will be able to utilize throughout the course of their career. So we are here for the long haul. Thank you so much for having me this evening.
Thank you for sponsoring this event and many more in the future, and look forward to having you as a panelist in the future as well for our town halls. Dr. Robinson, a longtime friend. We are moving on with our panelists, and this man is shining like new money. He is recently retired and living life great. He is most recently, very recently, the retired president of UPS International Incorporated and the Americas region. And right now he is ready to serve in his new role as a man of leisure. So I'd like to introduce Mr. George Brooks. Please, Mr. Brooks, introduce yourself and talk about impact on HBCUs throughout the year.
Okay, thanks a lot, Will, and certainly great to see you, Will. You bring back a lot of memories, and this has been a good call already for me because, you know, my relationship with B.E.S.T, and I'm going to use that acronym, went back to my early days in management at UPS. At UPS, B.E.S.T was a big part of the Black executives' game plan. Our senior executives believed in B.E.S.T and felt that B.E.S.T was a big part of Black leaders giving back to the community, but also saw the value that these Black leaders got from being involved with those HBCUs. Their growth, their ability to go in and speak about their jobs and give these young students a firsthand view of the jobs that many of them was interested in. So I started doing that kind of work back in 1994, and I did it every year. And some years I did 2 or 3 visits to HBCUs around the country. And it wasn't just about the students, and I want to make that clear because the students got a great deal out of it, but I also believe that the administration and the professors got a great deal out of these visiting executives, these successful business people, and some of them were entrepreneurs, they were doctors, they were lawyers, there were a lot of successful people showing up on our HBCU campus, first and foremost to enhance the learning experience of the students, but also to help the administrators in some of their concerns. Because you had business people that had made big business decisions and had a lot of experience in making big decisions. They were able to also build relationships and help these administrators become better administrators on the campus. And I also believe that many of the professors that were involved in these visiting lecturers on their campuses learned about companies that they didn't know a whole lot about firsthand. So it was a win-win-win. And from a student standpoint, it created this one-on-one relationship with a student, African-American student. Many of them, as we know, came from pretty tough backgrounds. Being able to relate and talk to someone who has been through what they're trying to get through and able to relate to that individual, and that individual becoming a friend. Throughout my career at UPS, I continued to get phone calls from students that I met on HBCU campuses around the country. And these students early on became my mentee. But as I grew in my job and they grew in their jobs and their career, we just became genuine friends. We shared ideas and we grew together. We talked about some of their shortcomings, talked about some of my shortcomings, and we learned to help each other along the way. And I think we can't just look at it on the surface and say, yeah, we got successful leaders from the African-American community going to HBCU, doing what's right, helping those students that need help, but also it's the relationships that happen after we leave these campuses, where we continue to be mentors and we continue to coach these students along the way. This is a real win-win because I believe that many of our African-American students, I serve on the board at St. Augustine University in Raleigh. I've been there for a couple of years now, and I serve on a few other boards too, but that one in particular is front and center in my mind because I was at the graduation a couple weekends ago, and I watched these students graduate and are set and ready to take on the world. But many of them had never really had internships. Some of them hadn't really had a face-to-face look at what really happens in a big company, the politics, the ifs, ands, and buts about the things that you can and you can't do, the conversations you should have, the conversations you shouldn't have. How do you figure out how to get your boss, and how do you gain enough traction with him that he can recommend you to his boss, and those type of things. Those are important pieces that I think I was able to share with a lot of African-American students at HBCUs along the way. It was a real win for me. So I'm excited about B.E.S.T coming together. I think it's a great concept. I feel like we did some great work as beepers, but we didn't finish the job because the job's never finished. We always have an obligation to reach back, to grab, to help, to mentor, to motivate, and also in some cases to tell them when they're wrong or tell them that now is not the time. Those things sometimes students can't accept that from only certain people. And if you're a good mentor and you're a good person committed to the well-being of your race and to the overall community, this is a great program. I'm looking forward to being an active member of it and looking forward to being part of this call tonight. So thanks a lot, Will, and hello to everyone that I haven't said hello to.
Thank you, sir. Interesting what you said before about being at St. Aug's a couple of weeks ago and those students not having the opportunities to have those internships that they need. And it'd be interesting, we talk about the challenges a little bit later on regarding what happened this past year when really nobody could do anything. So it'll be I know we have some people here from schools that have joined tonight. So we could think about that, like what did that mean to the students and what did that do to them, especially when they had to graduate right away. Next up on our panel, he has 5 minutes on the floor. Is a very good friend of mine. His name is Brandon V. Ray. Got to say the V. Got to put it in there. He is the regional program manager and community operations at Amazon. He is formerly of AT&T. He is a graduate of Howard University, as he will tell you. Mr. Ray, please take to the stage and let everybody know about you and the impact that you've made throughout the years.
Oh, thank you, Will. Pleasure to be amongst this esteemed panel, and thank Dr. Robinson, Diageo, and sponsors, and everyone here. I'm Brandon Ray, as Will said, class of Howard University 2004. Can't believe it's been a little while. Looking to see some of my peers here. Thank you for supporting too. I'm again program manager for community operations for Amazon, and in this role, I'm responsible for the community relations and mitigation for all these beautiful delivery stations that you see throughout the New York, New Jersey area and throughout America, but really I covered New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. We're trying to do everything we can to get those packages from from our facilities to the doorstep. So I hope everybody is an Amazon customer. I am happy that that Mr. Alonso is working hard on our Amazon original show, The Boys. That's great. So I'm very happy that my Howard alum is working hard, and we're just trying to create that good content at Amazon. Just always, Howard University next has been one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. And it laid a foundation for me to be a corporate executive for 2 Fortune 10 companies. I reached out to, I put in the chat some links to highlight Howard and other HBCUs, but Howard was, the School of Business in particular, was ranked #1 for best opportunities for minorities by the Wall Street Journal. Also, Amazon has created a strong partnership with Amazon Studios and Howard University, particularly the School of Fine Arts and Communications, for a strong partnership to increase the amount of not only just actors, but also behind the scenes, the production side, the content creation side, and to really create a bridge for opportunities. Howard and HBCUs not help you, they help you to be the best executive that happens to be Black. It's not about training you to be a Black executive. And that is things that I hope that we could continue with the B.E.S.T program, continue that momentum forward to really give the tools and the access to opportunities. A lot of times, one thing I do at Amazon and when I was at AT&T was serve as a mentor, particularly to our HBCU pipeline. I helped create the bridge pipeline for AT&T and Howard University School of Business 21 Century Advantage program. I hope to try to replicate that here at Amazon, or just tack on all of the great things we're already doing. So all HBCUs, particularly the business schools, they really give you the foundation to be a strong executive who happens to be Black, not to be a Black executive. And that's what I love about being an alum of HBCU, particularly Howard. And I hope to continue like that and speak more about that throughout the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Before we go on, I would like to acknowledge our board members who are in the audience tonight. We know Sonia from the CIA. Dr. Robinson spoke earlier. Ms. Sharon Harris, formerly of Edward Waters College, now of Wells Fargo, right here. Welcome and thank you. And I do that because our next panelist is the chair of the board. For the B.E.S.T board, it is my pleasure to welcome Amber Batchelor, formerly Amber Thomas. That's how we knew her when she went to St. Augustine. She was a BEEP student, and now she is chair of the board. Now look at that. Look at that ascension. And I will let her speak about what she does now for We Venture, but I also would love to hear what she has to say about the impact that's been going on for her in her career with HBCUs.
Thank you so much, Will, and Carolyn, and shout out to Tracy. So we're so excited, right? B.E.S.T is so excited that we're here, but also that we continue to have the support from folks like you that are on the call this evening. You know, Aristotle said that excellence is not an act, but a habit. So like we are what we repeatedly do, right? So when we think about excellence, it's one of those qualities that really is defining of a person, an individual, regardless if you're Black, white, Asian Pacific Islander, you as a person, right? You have integrity, you have qualities. Excellence is one of those qualities. So when we look at B.E.S.T, we're looking at students and we're looking at executives. And as many have spoken about already tonight, having this really great connection to a prior Urban League program, that was a connection that I had as a student. I was a kind of a non-traditional student going into the program, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But right now in my role, I am the Women's Business Center Program Director of one of a handful of women's business centers out of the Small Business Administration. So we're funded in part through a cooperative agreement with the SBA. And the SBA, several years ago, decided that we really need to make sure that we are supporting women entrepreneurs. But even more so than that, Congress came out in 1988 with the Women's Business Ownership Act of 1988. It also birthed HR 5050. So HR 5050, it's really interesting. I won't get on my soapbox tonight about women and Black women entrepreneurs, but just a little taste of it. Before 1988, women had to have a male family member co-sign for them for a commercial loan. So if you wanted to start a business, you could not go into a bank by yourself. The congressional hearings were outrageously incredible. Bankers walking around the table after reviewing a woman's business plan, tapping her on the head and said, "Not this time, sweetie." The degrading things that happen to women, but specifically women of color, that so much so that Congress had to say, we need an act of Congress to step in to make sure that we are helping women be successful. And the Women's Business Center program is out to help women that have historically been excluded or underserved. And as you know, Black women are at the top of that list. So we are seeing the direct impact from HBCU graduates and their journey for entrepreneurship really right now through this necessity entrepreneurship wave that has come about due to the pandemic. Also, the SBA has identified 2 key priorities as it pertains to entrepreneurs. The first is we want to help folks that are in rural areas and opportunity zones. And as we all know, folks usually are at a lower socioeconomic status in that area. And those, especially in our communities in Florida, are the Black and brown communities. But even more so, they said the second priority is HBCUs. We need to make sure that we are reaching out to historically Black colleges and universities to bridge the gap between education, higher education, and entrepreneurship. And shout out to all of our employers that are on the call, because folks like myself, and I saw, I think I maybe saw DeMarcus on earlier, we are, products of the corporate environment. But for those that didn't go corporate and they're looking to start their own businesses, but they went to HBCUs, the SBA is saying, you need to actively go find them. So that's what we've been doing for the last 12 months throughout the pandemic, is we have been actively going to find them. So working with the alumni chapters of Bethune-Cookman University, Florida Memorial University, Southern, FAMU in Florida. And that's being replicated across the country. So that's a taste of what we're doing right now as it pertains to HBCUs. And I have just found personally in my collegiate career that being connected to these executives, and many of whom are on the call that serve either directly or indirectly as a mentor for me, really was a defining moment. So many of the opportunities that I had would not have existed without having the prior Black executive program. They just would not have. So I raised my hand and said, I want to be considered for every program possible. I was one of those folks that was very green. I'm sure we'll probably talk about tonight. I was a first generation college student and had no idea what it meant to go to college. I did great in high school. I was international baccalaureate. I was advanced placement. I was in orchestra. I did all the things to make our college application look good. But when it came to a financial aid packet, when Howard sent me my acceptance letter and told me everything I was eligible for, I thought that eligibility letter was my awards letter, and it wasn't. And I found that out after I had already moved my little stuff into my room, and my parents were able to put some gas in the Jeep and drive me up to DC, and I had no idea what I was getting into. So needless to say, first year at Howard was phenomenal. Learned so much in my one little year in the College of B, the School of B. And then I was out of school for 2 years, working 3 jobs to pay Howard back, and then also to get back into school. And it was St. Augustine's University that changed my life and allowed me to meet folks through the prior Black Executive Exchange Program. So internships every summer, paid internships every summer, job opportunities with UPS. I got to sit next to George Brooks at lunch, thanks to Gerald Barnes, and got to meet him. I got my first job offer on the golf course with a team of UPS golfers. So those stories are just a surface level for where the opportunities really are for students in their collegiate career to really step outside of their comfort zone and show up for the opportunities and be ready when they present themselves. So I'm excited to learn from the other panelists on the call tonight. Thank you so much for your moderation, Will.
Okay, and 2 things you said there. You made it right, and you got to St. Augustine's, and then the other thing you said, and I'm not going to get in trouble. Our other board member, DeMarcus Alexander, also a former B.E.S.T student from the Southern University of Baton Rouge, is on the call. So I just wanted to make sure that I acknowledged him, because I don't want to get in trouble later on. All right, so now we can get into the program. Thank you for your introductions, panelists. That was very amazing information, but we want to continue with this line of discussion now. So to the panelists in general, and anyone can answer first, what would you say has been the most frustrating or challenging part of supporting the work of students at HBCUs?
Um, oh,
Yes.
Mr. President.
No. I defer to you, Mr. Ray.
Just sometimes getting sometimes adults make it challenging for kids. I'll just summarize it like that. It's so many layers, and you want to give access to opportunities. And as we at Amazon say, and forgive me, I've been indoctrinated with a lot of leadership principles of Amazon, but the bias for action is not there. Meaning that, when we send an opportunity, it was for one example, it was an opportunity. I'm School of B, as we stated, not School of Engineering, but we're looking for software engineers. It was an opportunity from a Howard alum for a job, pretty much. I'll be flexible for their students within the school. I sent it to contact that's supposed to be, I guess, like the liaison. It was for a Howard alum looking for a junior in the School of Engineering, and then just never got a correspondence out from one student. And I said, now hold it. There's no way that if this job opportunity was out there for the number 2 company in the world, that a Howard alum is the hired person for that, they wouldn't look out for that. So it had to be a gap somewhere, or due to COVID, maybe just challenges getting access to information. But that's an opportunity lost, and they had to go to the regular pool of people, and I'm sure got a phenomenal candidate, but it could have been a phenomenal Howard candidate if they would have had access to opportunities. So sometimes just the lack of urgency for adults to get opportunities to kids, but then even if there are sometimes, this I hate to say this generation, because I'm still a millennial, I guess, by elderly millennial. I'm elderly. We need to be urgent when the opportunity comes. Whitney M. Young says, prepare, get prepared, so you don't have to, worry about, you'll be prepared when the opportunity comes. And so that's been really the 2 challenges I've seen thus far. So that's why I really try to either I form relationships with students, directly student leaders on campus, that's allowed to, and really get the information directly to them.
Dr. Chrite, you led off by letting us know that you joined to lead Bethune-Cookman when it was in some tumultuous times. So can you speak to the challenges that faced you when you got there, and also what you did to really rectify them, or at least face them?
Yeah, well, let me first say I'm just reminded why we made that move, listening to this panel and to these former students who are just the kind of individuals that I think are a wonderful affirmation of the critical role that these institutions assume, and how HBCUs uniquely and consistently punch way above, in some cases, the weight class. Look, let's be clear. And I know that we often do, but we shouldn't refer to these institutions monolithically, right? I mean, the problems that plagued BCU and others are not necessarily problems that you'll see at A&T or Morgan State or Howard or Morehouse or Hampton, and we know the drill. So I want to be careful with this. But I also want to say I came to higher education a little late after private sector stuff, but I've been in the game for a long time. And let me be clear that there are profound structural challenges and weaknesses in higher education in general, right? I mean, I've been a dean of a business school for major, including wealthy white institutions, and they've got serious challenges that you all know about. Those challenges at HBCUs are meta, right? Exactly, Daniel. I mean, they are exponentially more complicated, and so there's that. And I'm gonna get to Will's question in a minute. But the answer to the question in terms of what I think the biggest challenge is, it's that there simply isn't enough of you at the table. HBCUs at their best, like most universities at their best, operate at this intersection of intellectual rigor and market relevance. And most of our faculty are okay on the rigor and the scholarship and the pedagogy. But the relevance when it comes to preparing our students for a 21st century economy that exists at this intersection of digital and physical technologies takes a different mindset. And look, a lot of white institutions I work at don't have that, and we struggle with that in particular. but if they could have conversations with Mr. Brooks, what he said, with Mr. Ray and Mr. Robinson, that is what they need. But they can't be bolt-ons. This can't be ancillary. This can't be sort of a secondary component. This needs to be built into the core learning enterprise. That takes a different mindset and a different lens from faculty and leaders. That's a whole different issue, and so I'll get off that. But let me say this to Will's point. Look, Bethune-Cookman University was in free fall. Its governance structures, its leadership structures, it had massive legal issues. I had people looking at us like, what are you doing going there? Because it should not have survived. There were other institutions, as you know, Payne, Bennett, a couple of others, that lost probation and survived. Either were reaccredited through a different regional agency, but were small enough, 700-800 students, they could survive. Had Bethune-Cookman lost its probation, I can promise you, at 3,500 students, it would not, and a Division I, that's a whole other story, Division I sports, it would not have survived. And so we just felt that we were at a place in our lives where we could come and first we'll build in a level of fiscal discipline. I mean, serious, and again, my background is a B school, I sit on corporate boards, I think that helped to pare down the expenses, to work effectively with donors and stakeholders, and to lead without hubris or ego or not wanting anything from the institution other than to serve it, I think was important. That's a whole other issue at BCU as well. And so again, the blessing of our lifetime, it was just discipline, it was leadership, it was an incredible amount of work, a great cabinet, and faculty and students who are some of the most dedicated folks that I've ever seen. Those are some of the things, Will, that went into to our ability to turn the institution around.
So you left it better than when you got there.
Yeah, I think we can reasonably accurately say that is the case. Yes.
Okay. So that leads me into my next question, and you guys saw the guide. So I want to really just distinguish between the challenge facing the overall mission of our HBCUs, and as Dr. Chrite spoke to, the individual institution challenges themselves. So if we could just have our panelists really just think about like what is really challenging the mission of helping our students do thrive, right? As opposed to maybe not other institutions, but what you've seen as surrogates to these universities.
So, Will, I'd like to say something. So, United Negro College Fund, UNCF, did a study several years ago, and it talked about retention rates. Because for me, and my HBCU experience, and then mentoring students at different HBCUs, I found a key challenge to be retention. So yes, we have really great admissions counselors, and they're coming in and they, find this amazing talent. We get the talent in the door. We figure out how to help them out with financial aid, but how do we keep them here? So, and I know everyone's experience is very different and varies on the call, but when I think of challenges for HBCUs, I think of the challenges directly facing the student. And when HBCUs accept students, enroll students into their program, into their schools, their institutions, even poorly prepared students, they are accepting a key obligation to do everything in their power to make sure that these students are educated to the point of successful completion. And that was something that this particular report or study talked about. And yes, it takes a village, right? And the majority of staff, faculty that are on campus are people of color. So it feels like, has that family feel, regardless if you're going to a large university or to a small neighborhood private institution, 1,500 students like I did at St. Aug. My high school up the street was a national ranked high school, was larger than my university that I graduated from. So when I was on campus, I was a non-traditional student. So I always wanted to work because I had to work to pay to get myself through school until I got these great scholarships and internships from a lot of the folks on the call. So I worked with the Office of First Year Experience. So I'm like, if any student has a first year experience like me, they're not going to stay. So what can I do as a student to help? So I began a consulting agency while I was in school. And my first client was the Office of First Year Experience. And we sat down and we did a needs assessment to understand where the needs and the gaps were. And then from there, I built a program called our Peer Mentors Group. And it was more than just, oh, we're going to get them through orientation week. It was, okay, we're going to sit down and talk about your individual challenges you face as a student that could potentially lead to you not finishing your first year. Numbers show that if we can get students, HBCU students, through their first year, they are more likely to matriculate and graduate from that same institution. So that was our goal and that was our focus. So we were finding obviously socioeconomic impacts, needing to be able to send money back home, even though they were in college, not understanding how to navigate through the financial aid system, not understanding that they need to be applying for scholarships while they're already in school for the next year, not understanding what an unmet need is, not understanding the difference between a private loan and a public loan funded by the U.S. Department of Education. And that's just a taste of what, we uncovered and we're up against in terms of retention. So even after we finished that project, I started to expand my reach a bit more and start to just mentor students in peer group settings and then one-on-one throughout different HBCUs across the country. So I would say retention was a big challenge that I've seen.
That's important that you said that. And so you're talking about that connection with the students that they need in order to make it through their first year, even, especially, and then to go on. Now, Mr. Brooks, you talked earlier about that connection you had with students. You were on campus a couple of weeks ago for graduation, but maybe speak to that connection with the students. You said that having that one-on-one role with them helped them to see what they could do in the future, but what did it help them do to face the challenges they were facing at the time?
Well, I think you have to realize that many of the students on these HBCU campuses, especially a school like St. Augustine, came from pretty tough backgrounds. You still have a huge number of first generation college students. You have these inferior schools, you have poor teachers, limited guidance, broken homes. There's a lot of stuff that comes with these kids. These kids, in many cases, have a rough side. And I think it's important for them to see someone that looks like them, who they can relate to, and help them understand that, we all came from a tough background, but if you keep your eyes on your goals, you keep your nose clean, you do your work, you present yourself the right way, then the opportunities are there. And what I found out, and I didn't go to a HBCU, all three of my sisters did. I went to a majority white school. So I didn't really see the nurturing firsthand that happens on an HBCU campus. There's a huge family atmosphere that exists on that campus, more so than what I enjoyed when I was working on my bachelor's. But these students need to feel like people care, and not just the people on campus, but also in the outside world. If you grow up in a very humble type of childhood, and maybe you were in an all-black neighborhood, you went to an all-black school, even though you were in a major city, and then you go to a HBCU, and now you are setting your goals on joining corporate America, where most of those leaders are still white. I think there's a relationship that they need to have with someone else that looks like them, that can help guide them to understand some of the do's and some of the don'ts, and also give them some insight on how corporate America really works. And I believe that part is missing. Many of the professors there have had some time in corporate America, but many of them don't. Many of them are lifelong members of the academia, and they don't really have a good insight in understanding what happens your first day on the job as a new management person, or how do you go about having lunch with these new people who don't look like you. These things, I think, they are small, but they're important, because if you can't do some of these small things, I think sometimes you are put in a situation where you don't get additional opportunities, because you know, knowing how to conduct yourself in a meeting at a restaurant, or how to go about communicating about things that aren't controversial, I think are important things that students have to know. And I think a lot of those things are being missed. It's not in a class. I think it has to come from somebody you trust and somebody you're not embarrassed to ask questions to. And I don't know if that exists without some help from some executives. And I think the last point I think we can look at HBCUs in general and look at how much money comes from the alumni, and know that there's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect, you know, when these alumni leave and they don't send money back and they don't stay involved. We have a lot of that. We have more of that with graduates from HBCUs than we have from these majority campuses. And I think that is a drawback. So there has to be people stepping up. And, you know, a guy like me who's able to get more involved than I could when I was in corporate America, I think is an ideal spot for me. I've stayed involved with HBCUs and will continue to stay involved, but it's all because of the students and me understanding that they lack a lot of the housekeeping things that you can't really get in college. You got to get those things from friends and learn those things along the way.
Will, could I chime in for a minute? I put an article in the chat about the settlement between the 4 HBCUs in the state of Maryland, because there's a lot of historical Black college public institutions, and one challenge I would say is the disparity of funding statewide for public PWI universities and public HBCUs. My wife, she finished at Florida State, but started at FAMU, and literally those are two schools, two publicly state schools. But if you go on one side of the track, you can see a drastic difference in what type of resources and support. So while Mr. Brook is right, undisclosed, restricted funding from alumni giving is super important. It should be front and center. But we also, for a challenge, is the systematic racism for decades, generations, for our HBCU public institutions that states have continued to discriminate against, and hopefully they're atoning for it with this close to $600 million settlement in Maryland. Which, if you settle, that means you have you're showing that you're guilty of something and want to resolve it. But hopefully that formula can change. You know, Florida and you know, you can look at University of Virginia versus Virginia State. You can look at I see Jamel's here, you know, Brother Vandenberg. We can look at Ohio State versus Central, and a private institution like Wilberforce. So we got to just be, you know, cautious also of our elected officials and our state level government, where we have a lot of majority HBCU public institutions, and what is the formula and the support from the states that they're getting from the legislatures and the executive branch.
It's interesting you say that. We're going to talk about funding in a moment, but I'd like to go back just a minute to have Dr. Chrite speak on something Amber talked about, being a first-generation college student and how it was overwhelming that first year. Mr. Brooks talked about how the need for maybe an external, like the professors are doing what they can do in order to help these students, but having an executive to speak to those students externally. So Dr. Chrite, what do you feel is the importance of having that extra support in addition to what the professors are providing?
Well, as I said, I think that if HBCU students, certainly at places like Bethune-Cookman, had more access to folks like you on this panel, then we'd have a different set of experiences. Look, the criticality of external partnerships with companies like UPS and with individuals like you all that are mutually beneficial, that are reciprocal, and that are sustained. I mean, even having you all come in and do a guest lecture to deconstruct the case, to talk about your experiences. Here's the issue at too many of our institutions. The faculty members, again, it's that issue of rigor and relevance. The faculty members do not have, by and large, sufficient connectivity with the marketplace and with the demands required for today's marketplace. And so their ability to really transfer the skills and the experiences that students need is lacking. But that's not just our institutions. As I said, it's meta with our institutions, and that's a factor everywhere. And I want to also comment on what was said earlier about first gen students. So one of the things that I was most proud of, and look, I came out of Detroit public schools, and thank God for Michigan State, land grant institution, let me in when they really should not have. I didn't know that then, but and so places like Bethune-Cookman, Mary McLeod Bethune, our founder and benefactor, referred to the students that we take as diamonds in the rough. And as George said, some of these young brothers and sisters bring trauma. They bring adult level problems to the institution. And so we have to deal with that, right? And yet that's balanced by the reality. And someone else said this as well. At Bethune-Cookman, if you want to major in computer engineering, you will major in computer engineering. If you want to major in nursing and you can get, and you really do the work, someone will guide you through that. We all know, I went to Michigan State, and Missouri. And we know in difficult majors, 1 or 2 courses, and what are they going to do? They're going to guide you elsewhere. That is not what we do. It's part of the joy, but it's also part of the dilemma. It adds to delayed matriculation rates. It adds to higher costs for students. It adds to angst and frustrations. But our faculty and staff are there to sort of lift those students up, and that costs money. Bethune-Cookman University is built on a city dump in the kind of neighborhood you would expect it to be built on, because 1904, that's the only place a Black woman could get a university. And so we have all of the detritus of drugs and addiction and mental health issues, and it's a food desert, and all of that. And we're trying to educate these kids. So, few things are more timely than this kind of conversation, to have folks like you and your respective companies at the table, because these are some brilliant and talented folks. They just need to be given the opportunity to show what they can do, and that's going to start in large part with folks like you. And so I'm just really, really grateful for this.
Thank you, sir. So Brandon spoke briefly about the financial challenges, the lawsuits, and things that are going on that have been recently either been settled or sparked. So let's talk about the financial challenges. Now, we saw we have HBCUs have a lot of mainstream awareness especially this past year with the election of Vice President Kamala Harris. We know the work that Chadwick Boseman did with Howard and the HBCU community. We see sports legends like Deion Sanders and Eddie George going to HBCUs as head coaches. And we saw it just recently, again, at Howard, where Felicia Rashad was appointed dean of their fine arts program. So what do you feel, panelists, are the pros and cons of these actions amongst the general public? Like, do you feel like is there a pro and a con to this increased visibility among the mainstream? Like, what do you feel will come from this new look at HBCUs?
I'm not really seeing a con right now. I think more a spotlight is an amazing thing. 29,000 applications for 2,300 slots this past Howard University freshman class shows that there's a high demand, and it's going to force the university to adjust to embrace more applicants than just 2,300. But I feel with COVID, they had to, make some stark adjustments. As Dr. Frederick and his team had to make some stark adjustments. I see nothing but I see access to, more spotlight on amazing talent, access to more opportunities, more corporations and a variety of different industries coming into not just, my alma mater, but all HBCUs. And then it would be up to leadership at these universities to be more, to continue to embrace, at least for career, and I'll just focus on the business world and engineering, as Dr. Chrite said, with engineering, just be more embracive of the private sector. Literally do everything you can to be an open door and restrict barriers. As a former lobbyist, personally, I just hate regulation of any kind, but we're not saying sort of not to, of course we have rules, but we just got to be more innovative. I feel if for the sake of our future, if the opportunity and the iron, we're trying to strike while the iron's hot right now, let's be flexible and innovative as institutions. That's going to be charged from the deans to the professors, to the adjunct professors, and to the students. Let's just embrace more partnerships, continue to and amplify the partnerships too. Sometimes I think we get lost in, the dollar amount. And if it's not a certain dollar amount just now, it's like, oh, well, that's all you can do, versus let's talk about the dollars and let's talk about opportunities for our future so we can prepare future alum to be senior C-suite leaders in the corporations and to give back. So that's, I just hope that, the pro is that we continue to provide more access to opportunities, more access to resources, and that the universities will be embracive of it and flexible within reason, because they have, but to really be innovative and embracive. The only con I would say, and I don't think it's going to happen, because I think we're going to keep the foot on the gas on every side, civically engaged, focus on education. I don't want this bubble to burst, but it will burst if we as a people, not just for, making sure kids get an education, but just are not civically engaged in every step of the way. If we fall asleep again civically, and it has to take another tragedy to wake us up, then I think this bubble will burst. So that's the con that I can see.
Doctor?
So can I just say that I really appreciate that. And so as I said, renaissance for Black folks in general, renaissance for HBCUs, and it's just been a beautiful thing. But may I say, we're not all Howard or Morehouse or Spelman. It was, and look, like I said, someone to Morehouse, and God bless him. I know David, these are exceptional institutions. The only concern, not the only, one of the concerns that I have is that the focus, understandably, is largely still, and this is demonstrably true if you look at the flow of funds, aimed at the upper tier, 1/3, if you will, of HBCUs. And I think that's great. They deserve it. I mean, God bless them. And what I hope is that the smaller institutions, the three private universities in Florida, for example, Florida Memorial, Bethune-Cookman, two of them, do not get the attention and time, and I think that could have some long-term sort of more pernicious effects than are maybe evident now. And maybe it's just that we were just hypersensitive to it at the institution. But I would say that we all these institutions, from the smallest, poorest, so I mentioned Wilberforce, to the wealthiest, provide essential services and deserve to be funded at a level that none of them are at. And I would just want to put that out there. That's one of the things on my mind.
Mhm.
Amber.
Well, and I would just loving listening to both you guys. I was like, oh my goodness, I need to be participating as well as just enjoying the dialogue. So I would definitely, I want us to go internal, right? I want us to think about what does it look like for our development offices, institutional advancement and development and alumni affairs, to really put in the work to do the initial outreach to all. Oh my goodness, it's 2021. You have access to information about all these organizations and agencies and groups and nonprofits that are literally writing checks to HBCUs, even local government, right? Local government worked with a really great local government agency that said, hey, I need a minority, diversity, inclusion element of my small business development plan. Do you have someone that can help me? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, of course. You need to be including like all these HBCU alumni chapters and all these other folks, right? But again, sorry, I don't want to get on my little soapbox, but what we're doing locally. But just for the last 15 years of doing a lot of deep development work, whenever there's an opportunity like this that's unprecedented, that shows up, the development offices and teams really have to put in that much more work to stay in front and stay ahead of the folks that people know, kind of to the points that are already made. You have to have a plan. This just can't be an opportunity for us to say, okay, great, we're going to watch the dollars roll in. Why not ask one of these really great donors out there, hey, here is our last annual report. Here is our, Showtime students, and just put everybody out there and highlight it and allow them to say, oh, great, this is wonderful. So you weren't on our initial list. However, we do have some dollars available. Would love to talk to you further about this opportunity. Like, we can't be shy. We have to go and ask. And sometimes people feel as though, well, I don't want to beg for dollars from this institution or that institution. And it's not begging. It's really giving an opportunity to allow all the work that you've done up to this point in academia and with the matriculation of the students there, and really show off your students. Every university has great students in college, has great students that they really can put at the forefront to help them develop that, what I like to call your case for support, right? And if they don't know about you or haven't met you before, then they're not going to know about your case for support. But every development office and team already usually has a very nice one put together. And I'll wrap by saying this, is that we really have to make sure that the management of these funds is well taken care of and well nurtured internally. And I know that a lot of different groups are making sure they're bringing in folks the right background and the right talent to handle grant management or all these new initiatives that are coming in. But it would be great if someone proactively asked, hey, agency X or corporate X company, would you mind this being a matching campaign where our alumni can match you dollar for dollar? That gets people excited. That motivates your alumni and it sparks a fire under them. So if you have a group of alumni that only come around during homecoming, maybe this is an opportunity to revitalize that energy that they have once a year and really have it as a blanket throughout the entire year as in terms of development.
It's interesting you spoke about alumni, and I think I misspoke earlier. When I asked the question, I was like, how do we do you view it as a pro or a con? But really, how do you expand the focus of these donors? Because we had the former Mrs. Bezos, so she gave money to universities of her choice. So what about those schools that Dr. Chrite was talking about, those schools that are not Howard and Spelman and Morehouse? Like, how do we get these donors? What do we need to do in order to get them more focused on the Claflins and the Lemoyne Owens? Like, what do we need to do in order to help them see past the big five? Like, how does that work? How do we do that?
So let me just say that for me and for BCU, we had to regain trust, right? I mean, this was a university that had been in the headlines for a few years, just horrendous news reports about, just hubris and ineptitude and corruption and who would want to give to that? I mean, we have to own that. I mean, this was not an easy situation, right? I wasn't from here. We didn't grow up here. And yet we had to deal with donors and alumni and corporate partners. And so the first thing you just try to do is perform, right? Forge relationships, hire the best people you can, and unleash them and let them do their thing while building the kind of credibility, balancing the budget, getting a couple of decent gifts, getting off probation, getting the state to come in and recognize the value you provide. And that's how you begin to build. But I will tell you, one of the many tensions that I had is were unrealistic expectations for fundraising. And again, I've brought in close to $100 million a year. I mean, $100 million in my career at white schools. I know how to raise money. But to come into a place like Bethune-Cookman and to expect, the transformational gift after what the institution has been through until you earn that credibility it just wasn't part of the reality. So reconciling an institution's capacity with what the market will bear and what donors will do is a reflection of a level of maturity in terms of governance and leadership that too many of our institutions still don't have. Many more of them do now, and that's evident, but too many of them still don't, and that's part of what we're trying to, I think, build on.
Will, can I add something really quickly?
Sure.
So when Dr. Chrite said what you said earlier about, if students had access to like all these really great folks that are on the call, right? With people like them that are on the call, I would have to say I learned how to give back to my institution from Derek Waters. He was one of my first mentors at UPS in industrial engineering. And he said, I write a check to St. Aug every month or donate stock every month. And I'm sure he wouldn't mind me telling you guys this on a recorded line, that every month to St. Aug as though it's a bill that I pay. And it really stuck with me the whole time I was at UPS. And then when it was time for me, I love United Way. I sit on the board for United Way locally. But all my United Way work started with UPS. And I was like, okay, I need to give. Who am I going to give to? And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to give to St. Aug. And just even though it was a small donation, it was every month and it was recurring and it was my commitment. My husband also graduated from St. Aug. And that was what we did. And so I think sometimes if we can teach our folks, just the alumni part really quick, if we can teach our students while they're at the university a sense of pride, a sense of ownership, a sense of accountability to make sure you're pulling up the people that are coming behind you to make sure that you are taking care of the university once you're gone and leaving that legacy. If we can teach them that while they're there, we can make such a greater impact. I didn't learn it until after I left.
It's a deep conversation. It's a great start. I think we planted some seeds tonight. I think right here with this call, we're preaching to the choir about what needs to be done. But I feel like now it's our charge to go out and help to implement those charges that we need to get people to think of ways that they can give back. I want to stay on time. So I have two more questions from my panelists, and then we'll take a few questions from the chat. What do you feel is missing, panelists, from the narrative or conversation on the state of HBCUs? Now, what specifically would you like to see more focus on when it comes to support of the HBCUs and their agendas?
I believe that right now, HBCUs have given a great opportunity to sort of right the ship. Me staying close to a number of HBCUs, and especially with the monies that have flowed into these institutions from the federal government and from big donors and others, I think it's now time that we sort of update our curriculum to drive the right degrees that attracts corporate America to these institutions. And you got to do that by making sure you on the cutting edge of what's the new hot subject and being on top of it. I I think many of our shortcomings at these HBCUs is because there's a high number of people graduating in business, but there's a low number of people graduating with STEM and some of these things that are certainly going to be important to our well-being going forward. And I believe the instructors and how we go about teaching these subjects have to be priority right now. Many of these HBCUs got a blessing during the COVID in order to correct their books and become more productive from a financial standpoint. We got to hire the right instructors. We got to drive the right subjects, and we got to create this win-win attitude in the students. You got to walk before you run. I know we talked a lot about these major big HBCUs getting a lot of the funding, but these smaller ones can get some of that funding too, but you got to walk before you run. And I think that walking part includes, let's get the right subjects being taught. Let's get the right instructors teaching those subjects, the right leaders leading these institutions. And we can't do it on this call. But to answer your question, Will, I believe we have to go back and take a deep dive and making sure that our foundation is right to exceed. I believe we got quite a few instructors that need to get closer to their subjects and be better at teaching these subjects. And I believe in some cases, the curriculum has to change to adapt to what's needed in the world today. Logistics is a big area, security, aeronautics. These areas are growing with the drones and all the things that are happening. We have to be front center in these areas in order to make sure that corporate America sees us over here. We got that. We got smart people that are doing great work in these areas. Come see them. Why don't you give them a job? Okay. Now, student, I need you to get back to this school and also pull someone else up. So we got to walk before we run. But I think the walking part is the right subjects, the right instructors, and the right leadership on these college campuses.
Okay. Panelists, anyone else have any thoughts? Like what Dr. Chrite did just that. Like he went to the institution and he had to start from the bottom and he built it back up from there. So I think that's a great example of how it can get done. So we know that we have to give more attention to the foundational parts before we could fly. Here's my last question to the panelists. Given that you all have been in the trenches for a while, how will you specifically focus and direct your efforts moving forward? And how do you recruit and enlist others to do the same?
So I know specifically a direct way that I'm excited for St. Aug, and I need to hook up with George after the call. But I want to do an annual benefit for my alma mater every year. And it's something that can happen around homecoming that can sustain a group of 300 to 600 women. No offense, gentlemen, my male allies on the call, but women, business owners, entrepreneurs, professionals, government leaders, for us all to come together and raise money in a fun, exciting way. You won't even realize you're at a fundraiser, but I know that's my individual commitment. On a professional level, I am excited I'm actually taking a role as president and CEO of a regional chamber of commerce in Georgia. So I will be leaving the Women's Business Center. But for me, it's really helping the leadership in communities understand the necessity to make sure that they are working with or they're looking for talent and not just looking for them to fill up a picture on their About Us page or their recruitment page, but really to make sure that they have a strong pipeline of talented individuals and help them understand where to find them and how to recruit them, retain them, and allow them to grow within the company. So that's a personal commitment that I have to the regional community that I'm going to help lead.
It's really great, Amber. Congratulations on that. Let me say to that, Will, I mean, look, I will always continue to write checks. And one of another example that I'll continue to try to focus on is one of the companies where I'm an independent director. It's a very large, $18 billion enterprise that's never stepped foot on an HBCU campus. They've never hired. It's not a very diverse company. Not only did I get them in a UNCF virtual career fair, I had them at BCU. They're hiring interns. They are hungry for the talent. They recognize what these institutions offer, and so they are now huge and direct supporters of students and faculty. They've donated hundreds of thousands of dollars, and so there's that. In my new role, while it is not obviously at an HBCU, I've already talked to a number of my colleagues about creating exchange opportunities for students from Florida universities to come to Boston for a semester and to engage and to learn and grow in that sense in a way that I think can add some value. And anything else that I can do to continue to enhance the extraordinary work of these institutions, including engaging with these amazing folks on this panel, is something that I'll be dedicated to as I move on.
Definitely. Thank you again, Will, for allowing me to be a part of this panel. Personal responsibility, continue to give to my alma mater in strategic ways, but also continue to be a champion, not just for Howard, but for all HBCUs internally. Whether corporation I'm a part of, at Amazon, I'm going to continue. We have a whole big HBCU like Chime group, which is our internal network, and thousands of employees, and continue to make sure we put our dollars and resources to various HBCUs, but also to organizations such as TMCF and UNC, Thurgood Marshall College Fund, and United Negro College Fund, particularly to like bridge the gap funds. That's what I've been supporting at Howard for those students that are on the cusp of about to graduate but are a few dollars short. Those type of funds too have been really crucial to get students across the threshold for graduation rates. So that's more restricted funding, but figure out other ways of unrestricted. And then for internship opportunities and career opportunities, just continue to be a champion and help bridge the gap and find access to opportunities. So thank you again, Will.
Hey, Will, I serve on 2 college boards. One, we talked about St. Augustine, and Amber, certainly the new president at St. Augustine, Dr. McPhail, is a female, and you probably already know that, but I would love for you two to talk and get to know each other a little bit. I think there's some good synergies that you two can create to help drive some of that female leadership that's desperately needed. As a board member there, I am also chair of the nomination committee. So I have a hand in a lot of people that join the board, a lot of the people that come on campus that get involved with the school, and I'll continue to try to push that the right way. I've done, I believe, a good job in bringing African Americans into play, but the real piece that's missing is getting more other races involved in helping us lead these HBCUs to where they need to be. I need more good white folks to get involved with these HBCUs. I don't know if they see the true value in HBCUs, and a big part of what I want to do is to get more of those big decision makers in corporate America and these large entrepreneurs involved at SAU. I also serve on the board for the University System of Georgia, which oversees all the schools in the state of Georgia, all the public schools in the state of Georgia, which includes a number of HBCUs, the Albany States, Savannah State, Fort Valley. And we have done a good job in making sure they get their fair share, their monies. And it wasn't happening in the past, and I think we made some good gains. We still got some shortcomings there, because it's important that we realize if you're not at the table, then many things happen that are beyond your control. But if you're at the table, you have a responsibility to make sure that those that are in need get what they need. And the last thing, my wife and I started an endowment less than a year ago to help minority students go to college. It's going extremely well. Part of that endowment also includes helping kids finish that last mile. What I found out a few years ago, there's a huge number of African-American students that fail during their senior year because of finances. They can't afford to finish that last semester or those last 2 semesters. So we're trying to fill that gap and keep those students in school and let them finish and become a big productive member of society. So that's where I am. I continue to be really involved in helping mentor a lot of college students, a lot of African Americans who are trying to get ahead. And that is a priority in my mind, and that will continue. So thanks a lot, Will. I'll send it back to you.
Okay, we're going to try to squeeze in 3 questions because the chat has been bursting at the seams. So we're going to try to answer 3 questions. And the first one is for Dr. Chrite. The lack of more professors with the right mindset is affected by the apparent lack of succession plans at HBCUs. How can that be resolved?
Yeah, thanks. I inelegantly tried to respond to that in the chat. So this is this is really this is really critical. And of course, look, it depends on the institution again, but in general, succession planning. And this isn't done at most institutions, but again, when PWIs, sneeze, we're the ones that catch pneumonia, and the lack of succession planning, in my view, it has largely to do with the kind of governance and leadership that institutions have. And here is one of the challenges at BCU that I've said, and that place is magical. I mean, it's like awe-inspiring, as you know. But there are too many people at BCU who have never been anywhere other than BCU, and so I want you to think about this. Think about the evolution of Bethune-Cookman University in a small southern town that's always been on the financial margins, great history and wonderful tradition. And think of the extraordinary changes that have gone on around the world, technologically and strategically and otherwise. And then figure out what that convergence is or divergence. And if your folks don't get out into that world, how are they going to know how to prepare the next generation for that, which includes understanding skill sets, understanding, as somebody said, getting the right majors. Oh my God, that's a whole other issue in terms of what we teach and how we teach it is a root cause of some of the challenges. This starts with governance, as Mr. Brooks knows, and you got to get the right boards on. And so I think, Will, again, that's a really sort of inelegant answer. You just have to, you got to get the right presidents and provosts, and you have to have the right boards, and they have to make the right decisions in terms of who they hire and who they promote, even if those aren't the popular decisions. And they have to know the difference between the two, in my view.
Thank you. Sam Burston, the VP of University Relations at Clark Atlanta University. Welcome, sir. His question is, what is the challenge of low black male enrollment rates? The issue seems to be trending in the wrong direction, and there doesn't seem to be a focus to close the gap. What can be done to change that trajectory? This might be our last question too.
Look, that's a difficult question. They
were waiting for you to answer, Doctor.
We'd all be rich if we knew the answer to that, right?
Yeah,
Dr.
exactly. Look, I mean, where do we start, right? we don't have to look hard to understand how the prison industrial complex, how drugs and alcohol and violence have profoundly depleted the stock of young Black men across this country. And so outreach to communities in middle school is essential in my view. It's also having the right resources and the right staffing at universities and colleges when they can get there. And to get them there, you got to have the money. I want to say something else that might sound a little contrarian. I think one of the biggest advantages to our community that we have not fully leveraged is the community college system. Many of our HBCUs have transfer agreements, and those are lower cost opportunities for young men and women of color and just students in general. They don't have great graduation rates yet, but then neither do many HBCUs. So look, I don't mean to sort of punt so poorly on this question. It's just huge. And it starts long before they get to college. And that's something that policymakers and educators and law enforcement have to begin to deal with. And I hope as we have this renaissance as a community that will be part of the focus. Because again, I'm looking at the young people on this panel and wondering, how many of you were missing by not giving folks the opportunity to get to the table. So thank you.
That's a great note for us to close on. I'd like to thank our panelists, Dr. Chrite, Mr. George Brooks, Ms. Amber Batchelor, and Mr. Brandon Ray. We got work to do. We have a lot that we need to do. There's a lot that is still challenging our HBCUs, but it was great to have a conversation and come up with, if not solutions, then maybe leads as to how we could close those gaps and help our students to thrive going forward. That is all from me, but I'd like to hand it over to our other board member, Miss Carolyn Ellison. She would like to say a few words before we close out tonight. But thank you for having me. I know, again, I'm not Laz, but hopefully I did good in
Great job, Will. Thank you
so much. Carolyn, please.
So I just really want to, again, reiterate our thank yous for this conversation. The work that we have to do is absolutely personal. We would not be here tonight without the tremendous, and the B.E.S.T program would not exist without the tremendous support of our amazing board, starting with Sonia. Sonia, we wouldn't be here without you. So thank you. This program would not exist without you. Danielle, this evening would not exist without you. Thank you for your insight and your generosity to support us. There are several other board members on this call, so thank you, including previous board members from past work. Terry Bankston, thanks for showing up. Our panelists, George, I speak to George at least once a year. Again, this is personal. Thank you for, I would not have been able to navigate some really painful waters without you. Brent, I've known you since we were young. Thank you for taking my calls. Amber, you inspire me. Brandon, I'm so excited to meet you. My Turner construction family, thank you for showing up. And Will, I don't know, I think Laz has some competition. You did an amazing job. So please check us out on bestprogram.org. We need you. It is personal. It is not just about money. It is about volunteering. It is about being a listening ear for the next generation. Again, it's personal. So thank you. And I'm hoping everyone could just give a big hand to our initial event. Again, bestprogram.org. Thank you. Have a great night.
Guys, take care.
Bye now. Be safe.
Good night. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Guys have a great night.